welcome to Down the Fleece Hole. My name is Barb and I'm your host. I'm coming to you from mid-Michigan. Welcome back to returning viewers and welcome to any new viewers. So it's been a couple of weeks since the last podcast and I've been doing quite a bit. Last week we actually had our Michigan Fiber Festival in Allegan. And I was able to go on Friday. I worked the weekend, so I wasn't able to go during the weekend, but got a chance to go on Friday and to see that, so it was very fun. I've been doing, like I said, I've been doing quite a bit of stuff. Have some different projects that I've been working on. Along with that, also started something new, which I'll be sharing with you guys. So, the last time I did my podcast, I had started on a pair of socks that I was doing for a knit-along on our Unraveled, and I ended up going and I started off using hand-spun yarn that I had done, and I got down to the heel and I found out that the yarn itself was too light of a weight, and it wasn't going to work for the pattern, and it wasn't going to really work for socks. And so I decided to go into redo my project, actually using some commercial sock yarn that I had gotten. And I did quite a bit of mad knitting, and within a week I was able to go and to do a pair of socks, which I was really happy about. The pattern that was used, or the one that I chose to use, was the Regia the Socks and Lace pattern, which is a free pattern that you can find on the Shack and Meyer website. And so, here are the finished pair of socks. Now these were knitted from the cuff down. They used a German short row heel, which you can see here. And then on the toe itself, I decided to use what was called a barn toe, which is kind of like a wedged, kind of similar to the wedge toe. It's kind of between a wedge and a rounded toe. And instead of having to graft, you go and you decrease it down till you get to 10 to 8 stitches, and then you go and you run your tail through your remaining stitches, and you cinch and pull them tight, and then bring the yarn in and weave in the end of your yarn. So these have worked out really well. I was really happy with how they turned out. Of course, I got hair on these now, and that from the animals, and that since I did try them on. I did find a couple of tutorials that were good. There was one that I found on YouTube for doing the German short row, since that was a new technique for me. And then online I went and I had looked for different types of toes. I've done the basic wedge toe a couple of times on socks, and I wanted to see what else was available. And so I found on Interweave, and I will put a link in the show notes. They have a article from, I want to say it was a couple of years back, for Socktoberfest is what they called it. And it has several different sock toes that you can do. And that was where I found the barn toe. And then I also found on another site a master class that was done on different types of toes. And there's a couple of toes that I was thinking about trying. One is called a French toe, which is it's a rounded toe, kind of I think similar to the star toe. But there's some differences, and so I'll post the links for those, and anybody that might be interested in looking for different ways to do toes on your socks. If you haven't gotten to a point where you have a method that you really like to use or a toe that you really like to use, you can use those as a resource. So, for finished projects, that is all I have actually. But I did go and I did do some additional work on some of my other projects. And so, one of the ones that you have seen, if you've been following the podcast, is I have been working on my olive tree sweater. And this pattern is by Meiju KP. And it was a paid pattern on Raverly. And I have finally gotten to the point where I am now starting my ribbing on the bottom. And so, return it to the front. I have my progress keeper. And the last time I had started, I was right in this area here, and I have gotten quite a bit done on this. So a little bit more knitting, a couple of inches of ribbing will be done, and then I'll be starting on my sleeves. And so this will be nice. The weather's, we're getting some cooler weather here now in Michigan, and it'll be nice to have a sweater that'll be ready to go. And by the time that we really get into the sweater weather around here, I should have that one ready. The other pattern that I had started on, the other project that I have been working on, is a shawl that I have shown a couple of times. This one is a circular shawl, and it is by Mmario, and his patterns can be found on Raverly, and they also can be found in the IO group that he has, which has continued to be active even after his passing at the beginning of this year. And so, at this point right now, I am working on the knitted on border on this shawl. It is a 12, I want to say it's like about a 12, I think a 12 row pattern that is done, and it's knitted vertically, or it's knitted parallel onto the shawl. And that, so I have my live stitches here from the shawl body, and every other row I attach the border, which is being knitted up parallel to the body of the shawl. So 2 weeks ago when I showed this, this was where I was at on my border. And since then, I've gotten about 12 inches of the border knitted. And so I still have quite a bit to go, and that I have a feeling this is going to take me probably towards close to the end of this year, and that and a lot of it really I find it's the border itself. The shawl body, I was able to knit that up fairly quickly, but it's doing this border. And so for the border, I have quite a bit more here on the shawl body. And let's see. Yeah, and that there. So this is going to be a while. This will be one of my projects that I hope that I do get done before the end of the year. Just because definitely a lot of time has gone into it. I think if I was to do the pattern again, I'll have to see how the border looks once I do it. But I almost, I think that if I was to do it again, I might consider doing a different type of border, maybe doing a picot edging or something where it's got some a decorative element to it, but is a little quicker to do. So for knitting, that's all that I've actually been working on. And then I also started a new project, and I had years ago done counted cross stitch, and I got away from doing it around the same time that I got away from doing a lot of the different crafts that I had been working on, and that knitting, crochet, and recently I had been thinking about maybe going and doing some counted cross stitch again. I found one which it's not exactly all that difficult, but I figured it was a nice design to start with, something simple to just kind of get me back into doing counted cross stitch. And it was a kit that I found, and I found this at Walmart. And I don't know if you guys can read it or if the glare is showing, but it's a little clothes basket, and it says laundry today or naked tomorrow. And so I myself don't really like doing laundry. It's a little bit difficult actually with the setup I have right now. My washer machine, if I leave it to drain on its own, actually will overflow from the pipe that it drains into. And so whenever my washer machine actually drains water from the washer, the rinse cycles, I always have to be down there to go and to stop it from draining, and that to allow time for the water to go and to get down the pipe itself. So when I'm doing laundry, it's not, just set my washer and then, go back in 30-40 minutes and, put the clothes in the dryer and, just take care of that stuff. I have to, every 10-15 minutes, I have to be over where the washer is when it goes through its drain cycle, so that I can actually go and make sure that it doesn't overflow and flood the floor in the laundry room area. So when it comes to laundry, I tend to put it off. It would be a good way of saying it. And so I thought that this little cross stitch pattern, and that actually kind of was really nice for just the fact of how I feel when it comes to laundry. And a lot of times when it comes to doing laundry, I get to the point where I need to either do my laundry today or I won't have anything to wear tomorrow. And so I started this actually this past Monday, and this has gone really quick. I have just a little bit more lettering at the top to do. And then I also have just a little bit of a design element at the very bottom. And so this will be done here very soon. And then I will have to decide how I want to display it, and that if I want to keep it in the bamboo frame, hoop frame, or if I want to try to see about finding another way of displaying this. And so, like I said, this has been a very easy pattern to do, very quick to stitch up, and pretty simple to follow. And what's kind of nice is the fact that with having the pattern, and that you can actually go ahead and then choose different colors in that in the floss, and you could do this in different colors and have something that looks a little bit different than what the pattern itself is. But the kit itself was very inexpensive, and so this has been kind of nice to have to do instead of when I'm not wanting to knit or to spin, in that it's easy, lightweight, doesn't bother my hands or my wrists as much as sometimes knitting will, and that especially knitting for long periods of time sometimes can get kind of painful. And so this gives kind of a nice option of something different that doesn't use quite the same muscles. And so the other thing I did was I had picked up, there was another pattern kit that they had, which this one's a bit more advanced, and it's going to be my next one that I'm going to be working on. And this came in a kit with the floss and with the fabric, and it's called, I think, Nap Time. on that. But this is definitely going to be a much more detailed project to work on, just with the way that the coloring, the shading is done. I've already gone through the floss and I sorted those out. That was a bit of a pain because what they did was they in this one they had all the floss that's been cut into 1 yard lengths, and they were all put into just a bag. They weren't labeled individually, they weren't separated out individually, they were just, it's all kind of wrapped up and put into this bag, and then you have to sort through it. And some of these colors are so close in the shading, and some of them are actually like just 1 shade or 2 shades lighter than the other colors, that it was kind of a challenge to try to figure out what was what. You know, it would tell you how many yards in that you would have, and so you could kind of look and see, you know, count out how many strands you have of a certain one and figure out kind of, you know, what it probably was. But what I ended up doing was I found a DMC color chart for all the different flosses, and I printed that out. And it's not exactly 100% accurate on the printed out chart, but it's close enough that I was able to go ahead and compare the colors on the chart to what the color was that I was looking at, and I already had kind of an idea of probably what it was, but it let me go and verify actually what it was. And so that's one, hopefully, that next time I do my podcast, I'll actually be able to show you guys, and it'll be underway. So, some patterns that I'm going to be working on. I've talked about the Frivolous Cowl, or Frivolous Fair Isle Cowl. And that's one that I'm going to be starting here soon, is my plan. The other is, in September, the Knitters United, the Sock Knitters United group on our Unraveled is going to be having their September knit along on the sock patterns, and that starts September 1st, and I can't remember exactly what date. It's a 3-week, it goes for 3 weeks, and then you have to have your pictures posted and that for the socks. And so one of the options was one called Swan Song, and this is a toe-up sock, and this is a free pattern, and the designer on this is Wendy D. Johnson, and I'll have to post the link to where actually you could find the pattern itself. I just used the link when I was on the group site, and it took me right over to the PDF file, and that inside just printed it off. But I'll post in the show notes actually where that link is at. I do have some fun stuff to show you guys. I did bring some stuff back from Allegan with me, and that my mom and I went on Friday, as I said, and we were there for a good part of the day. And my mom bought me some stuff, and I did get a few things myself. So, the fun things that I got. I ended up getting, this is, let's see if you guys can see it. This is a Diz, and this is actually, it's made out of ceramic, and just plain on the back here with the holes and that. And I have a drum carder, and I have combs and stuff that I've been using, but I haven't had a Diz at all to use. And I saw these, and I thought they were really cute, and this one had dragonflies, and so decided to go ahead and to get one of these. So far, I haven't had a chance to really use it. I did notice that kind of on the inside, the edges are just a little rough, and I'll have to look into it. I know that you can do some sanding with pottery to help with finishing it. They did sand on the outside here, but the inside where the holes are, I don't believe were sanded. And so I'm going to talk to my mom actually about it, because she does do pottery itself, and so I know she knows what you can do with finishing and stuff. And I think with some just fine grit sandpaper, I can smooth those inside edges out so that the fiber doesn't catch and hold on. And speaking of my mom doing pottery, actually, this cup here is a cup that she did, and that she gave me. So all right. So the other thing, another thing I came away with was I got a project bag. And this one has got sheep on it. I've got a theme going recently. And what's really nice is the inside of the bag. There is a divider, so it's got two compartments. And the idea is that you go and you put your working yarn on one side, and you put your project in on the other side. And it's to help keep your yarn and your project from getting all tangled up. And so I used this actually when I was knitting my socks, and it worked really well. And that it's very nice, small, easy to kind of take around. And so this was real nice. The bag came from, let me see if I can, I just had the card. There we go. The bag was from MmaRioKKnits Fiber Arts, and she does have a shop on Etsy. And let's see if you can see the card there. So then, and the diz itself, that came from, I want to say they were called pottery sheep. Then I also got a skein of sock yarn. And this I really liked. It kind of reminds me of like mint chocolate chip, and that it's got some greens, some browns in it. And this is from Leading Men Fiber Arts, and it is in their colorway You Never Know. And so I'm going to hold on to this for a little bit. I figure out, probably do some socks, and decide on a pattern that I'd like to do some socks in this with. And then the other thing I got was, I ended up getting some stitch markers and some progress keepers. And so this one here is just a little moon and stars, and on the inside, or on it, it's engraved to the moon and back. And then there was this one here, a little acorn with some progress markers that are kind of in fall colors, autumn colors. And then, let's see if I can get this. I always wonder how things sometimes tangle up when they've just been sitting. And then there's this one here. I don't know if you guys can see it really well, but this is it's got a seashell, little seashell, and then some blue with blue crystal markers, or stitch markers. So that actually covers basically about everything. Not a whole lot really going on around here, and that just kind of keeping busy with work and trying to take care of things around the house. I know kids are going back to school. We had some kids in the around the area in some of the other school districts went back last week, and I know a lot of them are actually going to be going back this week. So for anybody who has kids that are going back to school, hopefully everything goes well on getting them ready, and hopefully you can enjoy some time in the house when they're gone, or if you're at work, at least hopefully things go well and you don't have to worry about what the kids are doing. So I guess that's about it, really. I can't think of really anything else. It's kind of not a whole lot more to talk about this week. So if you have any comments, please comment below. Subscribe to the channel, and you can join in on the discussion on the Down the Fleece Hole podcast group on Our Unraveled. And if you have any projects that you've been working on, I'd love to see them. If you're interested in maybe having us doing like maybe a knit along here, I would love to know about that too. If there's any interest, if anybody wants to participate in doing something, we can figure something out. If we want to do something geared specific items, or just something that's general. Show notes will be available on the Down the Fleece Hole podcast group on Our Unraveled. And please comment on the video, and don't forget to subscribe. And if you hit the little notification bell, it'll also let you know whenever new episodes of the podcast come out. So until next time, you guys all have a great day, and I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye.